far as I can see it, it seems like death threw a master ball at 1 9 tails, one wild level 99 9 tails. Well, go on everyone, Sanji Uchiha here and welcome back to the channel where today, this morning, tonight, this dimension, we're talking about Boruto Manga Chapter 55. Of course, shout out to everyone that actually came out for the live stream. At this point, by the time this video goes up, I guess it's safe to say last night because I'm recording this video, right after doing the stream. So yeah, it is what it is. But yo, chapter 55 Legacy, it feels like a fine conclusion, a fine epilogue to the fight, the conflict that we've been having for the last few months, involving Isshiki Otsutsuki and Momoshiki Otsutsuki. And it's taken the plot and kind of feels like it set things up, wiped the plate clean, and feels like we're about to start a fresh new arc. But anyway, before we get into it, guys, be sure to subscribe if you like Boruto content, naturally Boruto discussions, reviews, reactions, all that jazz and blues, all that jazz and blues when it comes down to Boruto. So I'd appreciate it. Plus, we're trying to get to 20,000 subs by the end of this year. So yeah. But without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so one of the big things going into this chapter, of course, is the fate of Kurama, the nine-tailed fox. Of course, everybody and their moms were spoiled on Kurama essentially dying in this chapter. And for such a long-standing, a character that stood the test of time from episode 1 or chapter 1 until now, to see him die, of course, it is an emotional time for the story, an emotional time for Naruto, the character. And honestly, I think it delivered, but at the same time, I'm already putting 2 and 2 together. And it's like, I wonder how this is going to look in the anime, how is this going to look with the music and the tone and the mood and the lighting. It's going to be very interesting to see once the anime actually gets to this point. But at the same time, I did love them having that final conversation essentially, and Kurama just kind of taking it like pretty easy. He's not like overly sad or anything. He's like, he just wanted to make sure he went out with and ensure that he made a difference in actually taking out Isshiki Otsutsuki. Now, what I find interesting about the conversation between, and absolutely funny as well, it's probably not appropriate, in this final conversation between Naruto and Kurama, is the whole fact that Naruto, the first thing he brings up is that you killed my parents, nigga. You see what I mean? But all fun and joke aside, I think it is a indication, or it's symbolic in some sort of way of how far Kurama's character has come from the demon fox to being a essential asset, an essential ally to Konoha and the whole shinobi world as a whole. So I think there's that, because as Naruto essentially puts it after that, he doesn't take long to switch to saying that all in all, despite everything, I'm glad you were there through it all. So there's that. So I like it, and I guess at the end of the day, it kind of falls in line with the whole Naruto's character, even though he can get on these long winding speeches, talk no jutsu, but at the same time, there's not much more to be said. They lived through it all, these 30+ years, so what's more to say, honestly. And at the same time, Naruto was thinking that he was dead at that point, or about to die, so there's that. So I found it interesting that Naruto kind of felt like he wasn't really ready for this moment, especially since there's so much things left, unanswered or left to do regarding Kawaki, Boruto, and the village. But it's at this point that we find out that Kurama essentially misled Naruto, and this is one of my negatives about the chapter, and this probably might have to do with the fact that there's a switch in writers from Kodachi to Kishimoto. The fact that during the build-up to Baryon mode, when Kurama was explaining the form, he definitely said that, yo, either me, you, or both are going to die. But in this chapter, Kishimoto wants to play it up like Kurama was misleading Naruto by saying, like, I never said you were going to die. So I think that's a negative for me against the chapter, but I guess it can live with. It probably might be borderline nitpicking, but it is what it is. So there's that. Now, again, I'll say to you persons who probably feel like, you know, Kurama can come back, and potentially, yes, he can, maybe. Maybe a part of him was split off and they can probably use that to bring him back or something. But I think for these three reasons, Kurama's permanent death here is what's needed for the story, because one, they need to kind of push Naruto and Sasuke, slowly phase them out of the story, and set them up for situations where they'll eventually be either killed, defeated, or sealed, or whatever the case. So this kind of falls in line with, you know, Sasuke losing his Rinnegan, Naruto losing the Nine Tails, whatever. Two, coming out of this situation with Isshiki and Momoshiki and actually having some sense of loss, having some consequences, I think it fits with the narrative and the vibe that we're going for the story going forward, as we kind of transition in putting Boruto in the, you know, the driver's seat essentially. So there is that as well, and of course it does raise the stakes for the series going forward. So yeah, I think, you know, honestly, this is it for Kurama, especially since Baron mode was explained that, you know, your chakra and the other user's chakra are kind of combined, fused, and converted to another form of energy altogether. The chakra that would be there to reincarnate Kurama definitely doesn't exist anymore, for argument's sake. So that's why I feel this is a permanent deal, and it actually works to the benefit of the story, I would say. So take that as you will. And what I loved about this chapter as well was, and it was kind of odd in terms of rereading it, when there's a lot of panels where you can see like Naruto, the way it's drawn by Ikimoto, you have Naruto like trying to put on a smile, but you can see by his, you know, by the panels and the drawing that Naruto is essentially, he feels like shit. Like, he feels down in the dumps, and he's trying to just kind of keep it together. And I kind of like that about the story, well, this chapter as well, in terms of just seeing the look on Naruto's face. But it's kind of funny as well, because rereading the chapter, it kind of seems like Naruto always has this odd smile on his face. So yeah, it is what it is right there. Of course, we do eventually go over to one of the things I was expecting for this chapter, which was getting more on code and actually just setting things up for how future conflicts and future antagonists in the series are going to go about operating. So we get an expansion on the lore, karma-wise, of course. Apparently, apart from unsuitable vessels who, like, similar to like a Jigen, who will die after the Otsutsuki reincarnates into them, and persons who just died outright, there's like a third category now, where persons who aren't suitable for the soul of the Otsutsuki, but at the same time receive the power and the DNA of the Otsutsuki, are about. And in this case, we have Code being that person falling into that category, having the, as Isshiki puts it in this chapter, the non-vessel white karma. So essentially, he has the power and the DNA of Isshiki, but just without the soul. So there's that. So it's interesting. So we have Isshiki coming out via the white karma and basically explaining to Code what happened, and the fact that he's leaving things to him now legacy wise. And we find out that, you know, Code really does worship Isshiki like no tomorrow. So yeah, so essentially with this chapter we have Isshiki passing on the Otsutsuki legacy, the will of Otsutsuki, like the will of fire, yeah, passing that on to Code. And honestly, it's like we shifted Ishiki's essentially, because he essentially lets Code know that, yo, I want you to either feed Boruto or Kawaki to the divine tree, get the divine tree, you know, grow it up, take over the planet, eat the chakra fruit, upgrade yourself, become a true Otsutsuki, go out, conquer other planets, do the same, rinse and repeat until you become a unique being, a god, as Isshiki puts it. So that's basically it. So right now, Code is essentially our gateway, potentially speaking, to, you know, the Otsutsuki clan, because I imagine at some point other Otsutsuki are going to come. We're going to see some interaction at some point. Probably this is probably way down into the future, because Code, yo, just having the man just like, maybe my thoughts together. The man, honestly, is on a revenge path. No, because by the end of this, he asks Isshiki like, who's responsible for your death, and he tells him, and of course, you know, Naruto, Sasuke, Kawaki, Boruto. So of course, Code has his sights set on Konoha at this point, more than likely, and with the white karma, with the power of Isshiki essentially, considering that he didn't die during, he's one of the person who didn't die but just can't, you know, be a vessel for Ishiki's soul, more than likely Code is as strong as Isshiki, so that still has us as the audience, or basically Naruto and Sasuke and everybody else in the village, on high alert, because if Code goes there, it's not going to be a pretty look, honestly. So there's that. Now, in terms of Boruto and Kawaki, Naruto and Sasuke getting back home, of course, you know, Sasuke is brought up to speed in terms of what's happened with Kurama, and of course, we have an interesting moment between Boruto and Kawaki this chapter. Some of what I was expecting from Boruto's character are kind of there with this chapter, with him seemingly having like a mental block, kind of mental fear of the whole karma seal and Momoshiki taking over. So that that internal conflict is starting to brew there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that spills over into external conflict with other characters. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes for the most part. But at the same time, with this chapter, we have Kawaki essentially giving Boruto some pointers, and I say that loosely, pointers, in terms of using space-time ninjutsu via the karma seal, which he eventually does, and he gets everybody back to the village. Now, I did like Kawaki in this chapter. Again, I think this chapter just stands as a reminder, or emphasis on the fact that Kawaki, at the end of the day, no matter what happens into the time skip, he more than likely isn't going to become evil, but more so an anti-hero, more than likely. So I think this chapter kind of just re-emphasized his development up to this point once again. So, you know, saying stuff like he's going to help Boruto, he's going to make sure that Boruto, you know, is in the clear, get rid of karma. Even though my karma's gone, you know, it's still gonna be 100% effort on my side to get us out of this situation. So I like that as well. Now, I think one of the things to end this review on is, of course, the Konoha section, where we had, you know, Shikamaru, Katasuke, Sumire, and Amado essentially just talking and finding out that, you know, the Boru gang is essentially back in Konoha. But what was interesting about this section, we see a part here where we have Amado essentially just, well, seemingly talking to himself or muttering into his hand. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has some communication device in his glove. And he actually looks pretty worried in this chapter based on how Ikimoto drew it. So, and then even by the end of this, before they, you know, started to go out to meet Naruto and Sasuke and Boruto and Kawaki, we have Sumire giving, you know, Amado that look like something is definitely off. So what I like about this chapter at the end of the day is that it sets up a lot of things from a conflict perspective to look forward to going forward into chapter 56 and beyond, because obviously a lot of persons were expecting, you know, things with Amado to, you know, boil up into something else. It's not the end of Amado's arc in the story, so getting to see that there is something at play with Amado, getting to see that there's some, you know, internal conflict with Boruto already, which is more than likely going to spill over into other areas of his life, more than likely. Getting a concrete idea of what's going to happen with, you know, the remainder, well, at least Code, and who is going to be the central antagonist right now going forward, while at the same time raising the stakes, as Naruto and Sasuke are not as powerful, while at the same time ensuring that our antagonist that's going to be taking Ishiki's place is more or less, you know, give or take probably 10 to 30% just as strong as, you know, Isshiki for the most part, with more than likely, due to the fact that he's been modified, he might not have the same issues that Jigen's body had harnessing Ishiki's power. So definitely a solid epilogue, solid, you know, continuation of the story for the most part, and I liked it a lot. I wouldn't say it was a hype chapter, but it definitely is setting the foundation for things to come. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how chapter 56 boils up, boils down, boils left, right, center. So yeah, but all in all, pretty solid chapter from Kurama going to the stakes being risen, to getting a good idea of the direction the story is going to go. All in all, I would say chapter 55 is a solid chapter. But anyway, let me know what you think. If there's anything I missed, definitely hit me up in the comment section below. Of course, share this video out if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new here and you made it this far in the video. I really do appreciate it. But anyway, Sanjay Uchiha, be sure to rate, comment, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next Boruto video.